Miliband there, about to speak. Let's see if we can listen in to him. We can't hear him just at the moment. They've got a digital poster hoarding on the side of that van there, which is going to reveal the poster which we can show you, I think, which is of the Gene Hunt, which they're using from ashes to ashes, which some people are saying is a bit of an own goal for Labour. There it is. Well,
it's not necessarily the one that I'd have chosen from the long list.
It makes David Cameron look quite good, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know about that, because this is about the Tories going back to the Thatcherite 80s, about cutting public services, about not looking after the ordinary man and woman. And I think that's an important message that Labour needs to get across. The point for me, though, is that this was an open competition. There were over 1,000 people who submitted entries, and it's caused a bit of a debate and a bit of news this morning. So it's got some publicity for the Labour Party and for this campaign.
Well, there it is on the side of that van in Basildon. Peter Kellner, we heard about Mondeo Man last time around. Do you think this campaign launched in Basildon, showing a popular TV character, is aimed at the more disillusioned voter, the people who aren't connected with politics but watch a lot of TV?
Well, what Labour's trying to do is frighten people. One of the odd things is, Matt, in normal market research, one of the great rules of advertising is you show your product, not your rival's product. And yet we've had the Conservatives putting up posters in the last few days showing Gordon Brown. We now have the Labour Party putting up posters showing David Cameron. This suggests to me it's going to be quite a negative election, in which the disillusion that Ruth has been talking about, that each party is going to try and direct it at their rival. So Labour wants people to be disillusioned with the Conservatives and vote Labour to avoid David Cameron becoming Prime Minister. The Conservatives are trying to push the disillusion onto Labour, and people vote against Gordon Brown. I'm not sure it's going to be a very elevated election campaign.
Ruth, you're nodding there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Peter. I don't think it's going to be a terribly elevated campaign, but the directing disillusion at the other party is one thing, but personalising that in the way that the parties have begun to do is entirely the wrong way, our research suggests, in order to engage these disillusioned and disengaged voters. There's about 30% of the electorate in our research who really value voting, regard it as almost a duty, an act of citizenship, and yet only about 53% of them say that they're certain to vote. There's a reason why 22% of them are not planning to go out and vote at this general election, and that kind of personalised negative campaigning is one of the reasons.
Tim Montgomery, let's just bring you back in and talk a little bit more about these posters. Obviously, by the sounds of it and judging by what Tory bloggers are saying on Twitter this morning, that Conservative supporters are quite happy with these posters. It makes David Cameron look a bit cool.
Well, yeah, that was certainly my reaction last night. I couldn't quite believe that Labour think that painting David Cameron as this great cult TV hero is a good idea. We've already actually, on conservativehome.com, we've already spoofed the Labour post, and we've got Brown sat on the bonnet of a Austin Maxi with strike signs all around him, and a load of rubbish piled up, and, you know, back to the 1970s with Brown. So I'm very grateful to Labour for putting this poster up and making our leader look cool. Thanks very much.
Peter Kellner, if I can just bring you back in, if that's OK. Let's talk about turnout, because obviously disillusioned voters is one thing and swing voters is one thing, but if people can't be bothered to go to the polls, it's all a bit irrelevant, isn't it?
You're absolutely right, Matt. And we've got a two-way tussle going on, and I don't know which side is going to win. People who are angry with the government, or perhaps with the Conservatives, and turn out to vote because of their anger, or people who are disillusioned with all politicians, say they've all got their snouts in the trough, they're all dishonest, I'll stay at home and watch EastEnders or Coronation Street. Now, my guess is turnout will be up a bit. Last time it was 61%. It used to be 70, 75, 80%. I think it'll still be in the 60s, but my guess is it will be a bit up on last time.
Yeah, Will, let's talk about turnout, because obviously a majority voted a Labour government in. They got their majority from the turnout last time. If those people don't turn up to the polls, how worrying is that for Labour?
I think it is worrying for Labour. I think that at the moment you've got people who haven't made their mind up about the Conservatives, but they've seen an economic crisis and a political crisis, and even though it may not be Gordon Brown's fault, they're pinning some of that blame on him. So Labour's got to take a positive message out to voters, saying what it's done over the last few years to make Britain better, but also what its vision is for the future, and persuade those people who are at the moment disillusioned with politics for very good reasons that they should turn out and that they should back the Labour Party, because it will bring in the better future.
Well, Ruth, how does this boil down then? Because we had a lot of talk last time around about Worcester Woman, Mondeo Man. How is this different this time around? Is it about more niche marketing rather than a sort of catch-all figure?
It is, and that's how the parties are going to play it. But Peter Kellner is right in the sense that the biggest problem is going to be disengagement right across the board in terms of turnout. And I think one of the things that our research shows is that there's no silver bullet to this. The parties are looking for the silver bullet, and it's difficult to find. And that's because the public is not a homogenous group. And you can't direct, sort of one message that solves all the problems in terms of their engagement profiles. Quite clearly, in terms of what the public want, if you're living in a marginal seat, then the amount of information you're getting is different to living in a non-marginal seat. But if the message is still negative, then if you're disengaged, disillusioned with politics, then you're still going to be turned off by that.
Tim Montgomery, it's an interesting point, isn't it? Spoof posters, spoof stuff online, it's all very entertaining, but really if people aren't that bothered with the political process, they don't even know who their MP is, they don't trust them, they're not going to vote. It's all a bit irrelevant, isn't it?
Well, I think negative posters often get a raw deal. People say they don't like them, but actually most evidence suggests that they are the most effective kind of posters. I think a distinction needs to be made between negative posters, which highlight a bad record, the fact that Labour have doubled the national debt, for example. I think that's a legitimate political point. And negative posters that are personal, that make personal attacks on people. I don't like those. I don't think voters like those. But actually, making a negative attack in the sense of Labour have doubled the national debt, they've released criminals early out of prison, those sorts of things I think are incredibly legitimate points to be made. The Conservative campaign overall, though, will be positive. It will be focused on the economy. It will be focused on things like George Osborne has announced this week, stopping the national insurance rise. So there'll be a balance across the whole campaign of what the Conservative message is to voters.
Will, what do you think? Do people want to see funny posters, or do they want actually hard policies?
Well, I think Tim's right to say there's different kinds of negative, and that politics is about choices. You have to put across your own choice, but you have to also present the choice that the other party poses. I think what we've been shown in this election cycle is that the poster's dead as a medium for getting your point across. No sooner have you put it up online than it gets spoofed by other people. Parties are going to have to look at different ways of communicating. Social media like Facebook and Twitter is one way to get your message across, but parties are going to have to be very imaginative.
Peter Kellner, let's just talk to you about the issue of swing voters then. If people are disenfranchised with the system, how difficult does it make your job?
Well, it makes my job difficult if at the end of the day, when we do our final poll the day before the election, there's a lot of people who are going to vote who haven't made up their minds. But so far, we've been all right. And I think what will happen is that the floating voters will make up their mind, perhaps quite late, perhaps the final weekend of the campaign, and that our final poll will catch that. But the other thing I'd say, Matt, is that these floating voters, the people of no fixed political home, they tend not to be concerned about specific issues like national insurance or tax or health or education. They form a much more broader view. They form a view of the characters of the parties and their leaders. Are they competent? Are they honest? Are they on my side? And it's that's going to be the currency of this campaign for floating voters. Which party, which leader comes across most to the floating voters as honest, competent and on the side of voters?
OK, there's plenty more to talk about this to come, I'm sure, in the run-up to the election. Peter Kellner, Tim Montgomery, thank you very much. And thank you to Dr. Ruth Fox and Will Straw here in the studio. Thank you both. Thank you, everybody.